All right, so there's a very specific way I recommend assembling these, because the smaller joints, like the wrist peg or the shoulder pegs, when they get warm, they become extremely fragile right where they're the thinnest. So if you actually go to move those or spin those while they're warm, they will break easily. So that's one thing I'll recommend, especially with the ankles here in a bit, is once you get those put together, you do not touch them until the figure cools down. If you try to move or articulate at all, it can damage and it will break. Notice the theme? I'm saying it will break. This resin is the bomb, trust me. Resin 1, Tough 74 version 2. Just wanted to reiterate that it will break, especially when it's warm. So we want to make sure we don't touch that after it's been heated up and assembled. So what I usually like to do is I like to actually go ahead and put the shoulder joint into the shoulder first. And then from there, I'm going to put the bicep onto the shoulder. From there, we're going to heat up this part of our bicep and pop in our elbow. Once again, this points up and it tells you which side goes where. And then from there, we're going to heat up our forearm, pop that into the elbow joint, heat up the hand, pop in the wrist peg into the hand, and then heat up the bottom of the forearm and go ahead and pop that wrist peg into the forearm. So let's get going. All right, so now we have the arm fully assembled, and it is pretty much going to be ready to go into the upper torso. Just a couple notes here. Notice how our gaps in between our joints there are fairly tight. If you can see the inner joint at all, then it's obviously not housed properly. And what you can do is just very, very gently, you want to heat this up for just a few seconds at a time and take your round nose pliers and just see if you can get that to shut. Another technique too, once again, is just to heat it up, and then you can also kind of push inward on the joint towards the socket and squeeze. If you notice in the previous video here, in the previous part that I just showed you, you notice I give it a good squeeze once it's all together. That really helps the joint stay together because it cools down fairly quickly. So when you squeeze that together, it houses in place properly. Sometimes you can start to move it and you notice it does pop out a little bit. That's when you really have noticed that it is not housed properly. And once again, just give it a little bit of heat and do what I previously mentioned, either squeeze it together with your fingers or the pliers very gently. Just to reiterate, these can damage the structure a little bit once it is warm. So just a light squeeze. With that, I recommend not moving it around much once again until you're certain it's absolutely cooled down. And when we are getting ready to go ahead and put this into the torso, you notice there's a thicker part of this joint and a thinner part. We want that thinner part up and that thicker part down.